Hey everyone, Dr. Amy Shah is back to talk about her new book, I Am So Effing Hungry, and her 5-step method for conquering cravings, boosting your mood, and making peace with your body. In today's episode, we'll talk about how today's food system is hijacking your brain and your cravings. You'll learn about how the gut microbiome impacts your hunger and what exactly psychobiotics are. She'll explain the psychology and neuroscience behind hunger and cravings, and she'll give us some hacks and small changes we can make every day to calm our cravings and take control over our health. Dr. Shah, welcome back to the show. Congrats on your book.
Thank you so much for having me back.
Yeah, well, I mean, the topic is near and dear to my heart.
Yes.
Your new book, I'm So Effing Hungry, it talks all about why it's not your fault. And we're going to dive into cravings, the neuroscience behind cravings, kind of the way food is being presented to us now in 2023, and how to conquer cravings, boost your mood, and sort of get back on track and at peace with your body. So thank you for being here and lending your time. I know you have a busy
Thank
practice, and it's fun to
Thanks.
have you.
Yeah, same.
Well, for people who didn't tune into our first episode, can you talk a little bit about your background?
I am an Indian immigrant. I came to the US with my family, obviously, when I was 5 years old. And my parents, my dad, my grandmother, and all my uncles that had come with us, within 2 or 3 years of coming to the US, they were diagnosed with type 2 diabetes. And it was weird because they were pretty thin, but they had changed their diets a lot after coming to the US because, it's immigrant lifestyle. You're working two jobs. My mom and dad didn't have time to cook and they didn't eat the same foods that they used to. And I started to get really into nutrition and how it's affecting the body and disease. So I ended up going to nutrition school at Cornell and then medical school to kind of help understand what was happening and also help families like my own. And what I realized is that not only are we struggling with nutrition in this country, with this book, what I realized is that we're really struggling with the cravings aspect, the hunger aspect. The same reasons we're so tired, the same reasons we're so sad are the same reasons we're so hungry. It's like that inner signaling pattern that is built to keep us full and happy and energetic is being attacked basically without us even really knowing it.
Yeah. So when you look back on your parents' life and some of the changes that they were making, what in your research has come up as major culprits in, and contributors to their chronic lifestyle diseases and things that we're all kind of coming in contact with today?
Yeah. So there is a phenomenon actually for people who move from countries outside the US and moving into countries, especially if they're coming from rural areas, that they develop diseases like diabetes and heart disease and high cholesterol and high blood pressure. And it's really sad because instead of eating their, locally grown food, unprocessed food, they start to eat, Pizza Hut, Taco Bell, McDonald's, Coke, and Doritos. And that's exactly what happened to my family. They were living in a place that didn't have access to a lot of packaged foods at all. And it was just the local foods that they would eat. And even though there's rice and there's grains, um, it wasn't like there weren't a lot of processed, ultra processed foods. And so for me, and what I talk about in the book is really it's this ultra processed food that we're eating. I mean, we talk about working out all the time, right? Oh, work out, burn 500 calories. But do you know how easy it is to eat 500 calories in like 10 minutes when you're using ultra processed food? It's like we need to spend a little more time talking about that aspect. And I know you're all about that. So, but I think a lot of people just kind of concentrate on the exercise, movement, dieting piece when really it's a lot of it is what we're presented with. It's not even our fault, as I say, because 75% of the grocery store is ultra processed.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I can tell you as a mom, there's been more processed food in my life in the last, like, I
Yes.
wouldn't say 4 years of Sebastian's life, but in the last two, when he's like 3 and 4 years old going to preschool. And just even trying to even trying to be strategic around like which crackers or like whatever grain-free puff or whatever. But the reality is you're exactly right. Like these are highly processed, highly palatable, even the quote unquote health air quotes, healthiest of these are acellular carbohydrates that hijack our hunger, that put us on a blood sugar roller coaster. And they're so easy to eat. Like it's that Pringles saying,
Yeah.
you pop,
Yeah.
you can't stop. Like there is no stopping with that in regards to being able to control your appetite or control the amount of food that you're eating. And I mean, if you're playing the calorie game, what a defeating game. I
Yeah.
literally just did the stairs with my girlfriend at a beach close to our house. And my Aura ring, rarely am I like tracking like, oh, how many calories did I
Yeah.
burn? Because that's not my MO. That puts me in like
Yeah.
a bad headspace and like, no,
Yeah.
thank you. But it was like, you worked out. I was like, yeah. How long did we go for? So like open it up and it's like, you know, something like 40 minutes and it was like 105 calories. And I was like, this is why calories don't work here.
I know.
You just feel defeated. And then if you're in contact with these highly palatable foods, it's like the box is gone and there's 300 to 500 calories and it's not
Um,
serving.
I'm glad you brought up your kids because that is my biggest concern. Because I have kids now that are teens, and what I realize is it starts, when they're in school, and unfortunately, our generation. So the young generation, the adolescents now, are consuming much more processed food than we were. And our parents consumed much less ultra processed food. So over the generations, it's not only depleting our gut bacteria, which actually is passed down through generations, we're also rewiring our brain because some of the problem with obesity is that there's misfiring and the wiring is different. And it happens because, you're pregnant and you are eating healthy, but now your children are going to be in an environment where they're eating 70 to 80% ultra processed, and then their children. So if you think about how that works, that's why it's really tragic. And you look at, I'm really scared for the kids because their rates of depression and anxiety are sky high. And we know that there's a gut brain connection and that their anxiety and depression is often coming from poor food choices, not getting enough light, not getting enough sleep. So that's, I think, the really hardest thing. They don't know any different. Like your poor 4-year-old, if he's given at school or at a party, the choice between an orange and an orange soda, like children just are going to pick the thing that tastes really good. They are not going to know, like, oh, but this orange has the fiber and the whatever. And so what ends up happening is they start to consume these highly palatable foods, and then they crave it because that's how they're created to make you crave them more. So I see, I talk to my kids about it all the time now because they're old enough. Because I think the only way around it is to bring awareness to it. So I don't know if you know what these like chili lime chips at Trader Joe's are, but my daughter was saying, okay, so there's these, they're like Taki knockoffs.
Okay.
And they're like marginally better. They use like slightly better ingredients. They have them at Sprouts, which is a health food store here, or Trader Joe's. And she said to me, that's how I feel when I eat those chili chips. Like, I feel like when I'm eating it, it's almost like I'm just wanting to eat the whole bag and it's hard to stop. And then I kind of think about when I can have it again. And I was like, that is that dopamine addiction pathway, that you can't really keep something in the house that actually triggers that pathway because all you're going to be thinking about the next meal is how you can have some of that addictive food. It's so sad.
Well, let's break down because I truly believe education is power for so many people. When we talk about adolescence, it's a really sticky topic online. Like you have people who are experts in the field and have gone to school to become dietitians and have a very strong stance against labeling any kind of food. And then you have people in maybe the functional space that will talk to you about like how foods impacting your blood sugar, your gut microbiome, your dopamine pathways. And for me as a mom, it's like, yeah, I don't want to label foods for my kids, but I have to empower them to know, like
Mhm.
Sebastian's 4, he sits down at the table, he knows that his chicken or his steak or, the carnitas or whatever it is that the eggs for breakfast, like he knows that those are a protein source and he knows that protein is important to me. And
Yeah.
he knows what's a veggie or what has fiber. And he knows that that's important to me. And we've talked about it. I mean, some of it's got to be over his head, but it's like, I feel like osmosis. Like, I feel like if I talk about it
Yes.
enough and like the, kind of takes me back to my parents, like carrots make you see, like your eyes
Mhm.
healthy or whatever. But it really is just creating an environment, not where I'm knocking the foods that he wants to eat at a birthday party or like calling them unhealthy, but really talking about growing foods and like blood sugar balancing foods. But at a certain point, you have to talk about these things with your kids because they're going to feel alienated, like your daughter, where you're
Yeah.
like, why do I feel so addicted to this? Or why do I feel like I have no control over this? To also empathize with them and say, look, like
Yeah.
I'm an expert in the space. I'm a doctor, or I'm a nutritionist, or like I'm a real human and I can tell you, I feel that way too.
Yeah.
Like that is, we don't, like no one likes to feel out of control, but also to normalize it is so important. Like I have so many clients who are like, I can't stop eating my kids' food. And I'm like, that's normal. That
Yeah.
stuff is literally like screaming at you from the pantry to eat it. Like, this is not your fault. And that's what I
I
love so much about your approach.
Yeah, and that's the thing, we don't realize, and I know you know this, but a lot of people don't realize, like, when these people make the foods, they actually have people connected to electrodes, and they're watching their dopamine pathways, and they're watching how to flavor it to this bliss point so that you aren't full, but you want more. It's like, you won't stop at the end of the bag. You'll keep going if there was a unlimited amount. And that's really scary because usually if you eat, a bowl of vegetables, you will enjoy it, but you'll be full at the end. You won't want to have another bowl. But with these foods. So what we were saying is educating people. Okay, hunger versus cravings. I'll tell you the difference. Hunger in its purest form is true need for nutrients. So it doesn't mean, so our hunger hormones like ghrelin are cyclical and they tend to come at the same times of day. And you can shift that a little bit if you want to like start your mornings just a little bit later, you can shift it. Ghrelin is cyclical. It's a reminder to eat. It's an actual hunger reminder because your body does not want you to go a full day or 2 days or 3 days without food, although we can survive, it does not want that because it's a lot of stress on the body. So ghrelin is like that reminder to eat. And that's a true hunger. Cravings is what we've been talking about for the last few minutes is really that feeling that you're want something for pleasure. Sometimes you just want that mouthfeel. You want to crunch something. You want that sweet taste. You want that brain dopamine release. And what people don't realize is that the same brain dopamine release you get with junk foods, you get with alcohol, with gambling, with social media. And we police that all the time for ourselves, but yet we don't recognize the foods that are doing that to us um, that on a daily basis. Like I know for me, that used to be Starbucks. I went to Columbia for a fellowship and I would come out of the subway and I would see the Starbucks. And I'd already had my breakfast and everything I was full. But I would say to myself, you know what? I'm going to reward myself today because it's the holidays or I did something really good. And so I would go and it would be like 9 a.m. and I would get a Starbucks. And it was usually like something like a mint mocha or something, or when it was a holidays, or be something with a lot of sugar and caffeine. And then the next day I would come and be like, well, I kind of want it again. And then it was like, I wait till 11, but then I would still get it. So it's like you look at your life and you're like, wow, I thought I was healthy, but I really was really addicted to that. And it took me a long time to break that addiction. Now, if someone offers that to me, it tastes so obnoxiously sweet. I can't believe that I would have that like almost every day.
Yeah. I mean, I have the same sort of a situation when I look back to like my first year and freshman year of college. I remember all my friends got into four-year universities, and I am one of like 26 relatives that went to the University of Southern California. And it was like, I am
Awesome.
going to USC.
Yeah.
So I got spring admitted to USC. So they were like, "Yeah, your grades are good, but we're gonna spring admit you." And so I was at a junior college for the first semester, and all my friends were off like rushing and in their, majors and meeting friends and living in the dorms. And I was at this junior college, and I remember every day walking up to, and I loved health and nutrition. Like I was at 24-hour fitness is my gym. And I was making food at my parents' house. I was into it enough to like care. But there was like the food cart there. And every day I got one of those like Costco lemon poppy seed muffins, like the size of my face.
Yeah.
Hindsight, it was like, I was bummed. Like I was
Yeah.
bummed. My friends were all off at four-year colleges. I was just trying to get through one semester at a junior college. I could finally get to, the four-year university I had to go to. And I was looking for dopamine. Like I was in
Yeah.
history class. That was like my least, like, don't talk to me about art. I mean, I love art, but like, I don't want to sit through an art history class on a projector. I was like, what
Yeah.
am I doing? And so I think we also have to address the fact that like it can be self-soothing for people, and that dopamine hit is real. Just like getting on social media is zoning people out, it's doing the exact same thing.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. I say to people, it's kind of like the new smoking. So, back in the day, smoking was accepted, and it was kind of bad for you, but it was socially accepted. And I feel like a lot of ultra processed foods that we eat right today that we normalize, like these frappuccinos or these large, size candy bars or whatever, it's normalized. It's like everyone does it. Well, we know it's bad for us, but you only live once, YOLO, right?
Yeah.
And it's kind of normalized, and it's not, nobody's going to make fun of you. It's almost like cool to be someone who eats those retro foods or eats, I eat burgers and fries, like I'm, all American or whatever. So I think we're going to get to a place, I hope, that it's going to be like cigarettes, and we're going to say, well, overwhelming evidence is showing that this is really bad for you, and let's teach our children not to be addicted like we were. But we're not even close to being there yet. It's really sad. And like you said, it's part of it is emotional soothing. I read somewhere that we're really primitive when it comes down to it. We want to survive, we want to procreate. And so when your body is trying to help you survive, it wants to remember this easiest way to soothe yourself, easiest way to calm your body down. And when it remembers, oh, yeah, that was the glass of alcohol, or that was the muffin, or it remembers those pathways. And then you start to want that. I know that when I used to work full time in the clinic, I would come home and I would be ravenous. It would be around 4:30 because I wanted to come home when the kids were still like just coming home from school. And I was kind of stressed, and I needed something to kind of calm me down. And I was always looking for that snack. It's almost like my brain knew what I needed to soothe myself. Now that I look back at it, it is self-soothing. It's like you're stressed, you're overwhelmed, and you just want like that feeling of dopamine.
Right. And the antidote to that, like looking at your lifestyle now, which by the way, we can talk about you and your husband's like killer transformations, but is clearly boundaries,
Yeah.
and boundaries in with your office, and then the times that you're able to, and that is a privilege, creating boundaries around that, and you work hard to get there, and having gym time and movement time, and putting those healthful foods on your plate. But whenever anyone's in a pressure cooker in life, like they're in grad school, they're in their first job, they're overworked, they have, maybe a negative relationship with their boss, that unwinding thing is real. But it's exactly what you say. I saw, and I'm so bad at TikTok. I think I've done it 5 times, but I did see someone share a TikTok on Instagram, and it was like something that went viral where some kids like we are normalizing like junk food so much that when someone eats real food, we're calling it deprivation and a healthy diet or like
Yeah.
dieting. And in reality, it's like they're eating whole foods that are homemade and they're choosing not to have processed foods. This isn't dieting. It's just we've normalized that side of, like you said, whether it's cool or it's all American or it's like, you have the financial ability to just buy whatever processed foods you want, and it's scary to think about for the younger generations because having a major impact on our body, and that's what you also talk about in your book, and I want to dive into that. What are the effects that these processed foods and not having a whole food diet are having on the gut microbiome, and how does the gut microbiome impact our hunger?
Yeah, our gut bacteria create hunger signals and fullness signals and craving signals and happiness and sad signals. And I think it's really weird to imagine that there's these organisms inside of us that are running the show, but literally they are. And we don't know whether they're running the show in the way like in friendship with us, or is it just like they're trying to survive themselves, so they're sending the signals that they need to survive. And but either way, we know that they're more dominating than ours, so their dopamine that they produce is 10 to 100 times stronger than ours, so they can shift the conversation. If they want a certain food or they want you to take a certain action, the signals are stronger than our own and they can hijack our own signals, which is both fascinating and like scary because we are 40% less diverse in our microbiome than, a few years ago or couple hundred years ago. And that keeps decreasing from the generations because, you get your child gets your microbiome and you got your parents' microbiome. And as we start to change our food supply, as we start to ingest a lot of antimicrobial foods and use a lot of antimicrobial medications and cleansers, we start to kill our microbiome. And then that starts to affect our mood, our behavior, our cravings. And then we pass it on to our kids. So it's like a huge, huge ignored part of health right now is, hey, guess what? All these things we're doing, so many of them are hurting this very essential part of our immune system, of our hunger wiring, of our happiness. So the hunger part is like, when you start to crave, when you change your diet in about 3 days, your gut microbiome changes. And so the hopeful nature of this is in as little as 3 days, you start to have new bacteria in your gut that is going to start to help you make better decisions because they're going to crave good foods. They crave fiber. They crave whole foods. They crave polyphenols like berries and nuts and teas. And so they're going to help you crave the right thing when you start to change it. So the first couple of days might be hard, but then you get help. And so I think that that's kind of the remedy to so many of our issues right now.
Oh, yeah. I mean, it's amazing to think this symbiotic relationship between our microbes and even our mental health or the way that we feel and what we crave are so connected. Again, it's taking, I think it takes the shame and the guilt away from a lot of food choices. And it empowers people to know, like, hey, in 3 days, I'm going to see an impact. And I'm sure people listening have ever like decided to like go take sugar out of their diet for, a few weeks or a month, or maybe they've done it. They're still doing it. Kudos to you guys. Or gotten serious about whole foods. They start to feel those impacts right away. And I think that is really beneficial. Are there any negative side effects or things people should expect when they start to move away from those processed foods and into a whole food diet? What's normal?
Yeah, it's very normal to feel like when you eat your first broccoli or cauliflower, that you might get some stomach discomfort. Your gut bacteria are not used to it. Your digestion's not used to it. So I always tell people start really slowly. Like leafy greens are a great way to add fiber that's more soluble, that's less irritating to your gut. Like for a lot of people, cauliflower, broccoli has to be very well cooked in very small amounts. Brussels sprouts, same thing. They're very, very beneficial. Like just because, like on TikTok, you mentioned TikTok, and it really bothers me when I see they'll say foods that will make like you should avoid if you're trying to improve your gut health, and they'll say like broccoli and cauliflower, and I'm like, no, but I see what you're saying. Like she or he was saying that it'll bloat you. Because if you're eating a highly processed diet, you start adding broccoli and cauliflower, you will feel bloated. It takes a lot of gut bacteria and they have a lot of byproducts. But that doesn't mean you should avoid it. Actually, that is a sign that, hey, you probably need to incorporate more fiber and eat those things in small amounts until your body can tolerate it. Like I'm sure you and I can probably tolerate more than someone who had just started eating that. And so you can build up to that. So it's normal to feel a little discomfort. And it's normal to feel like your dopamine is lacking. Like, so what I talk about in the book is a way to retrain your brain to get dopamine from the right sources. So people don't really realize, but exercise is a big producer of dopamine. Sunlight's like the biggest one that you can easily get in a few minutes. Like going for a sunny walk is a great antidote to soothing yourself rather than like scrolling social media or having that junk food. And there are foods actually that bump up your dopamine. And so you can eat those foods, and I have a list of high dopamine foods. Dopamine is created by an amino acid called tyrosine. And if you eat high tyrosine foods, you can get that higher level of dopamine, especially when you're kind of changing your diet and you need a little boost.
So, for people that don't know, what is tyrosine? What kind of foods will you find it in?
Yeah. So tyrosine is an amino acid, and a lot of high protein foods will have tyrosine. And so, this whole old, advice of eating a high protein breakfast actually goes with this dopamine theory as well, because cottage cheese, yogurt, nuts, all of these things raise your dopamine because they are full of tyrosine. And so I love to start my day with higher dopamine foods because dopamine is very closely related to adrenaline. And that's why we all drink coffee. And that's why because we want that little boost of energy in the morning. So dopamine producing foods are really great, and especially if you're someone who's trying to get yourself off of the negative dopamine sources, this is a great solution for you.
And I don't think people make the correlation, or they don't see the connection between eating a high protein diet and having less cravings for sugar and a balanced mood. And I'm right there with you. Like one of the number one things that I will look at with a client is how much protein are you eating throughout the day, but specifically, how do we lock in breakfast first and work our way through the rest of the day? Because it just has a major impact on blood sugar, which is like my jam, but also on hunger and just your mood. So good.
Yeah.
Well, a few minutes ago, you mentioned your gut microbes having byproducts. So can we break down the byproducts of your gut microbiome, what they're called, how they may impact your brain and your nervous system?
Yeah. So one of the biggest things you can be doing to improve your gut health has nothing to do with diet, actually. It is exercise. Exercise is actually your best probiotic. Gut microbes get very, very happy when you exercise, and they produce these byproducts that go to your entire body, and they calm the inflammation in your body. And when you are exercising, so you not only do you get that boost of dopamine and you get your blood circulating, but you get this magic anti-inflammatory effect mediated by the gut bacteria. And I think that that's something that anyone could do, even if they're not changing their diet, is start to exercise more. And then we have, foods that create all kinds of positive biochemicals through the gut microbiome. I talk about 6 foods in the book that actually are the most potent mediators of signaling from the microbiome. One of them is polyphenol. So that's uh, berries and teas and dark chocolate, even, and brightly colored vegetables. Then we have glucosinolates, which is that broccoli cauliflower group. Glucosinolates have a compound called glucosinolate, which the gut bacteria loves, and it makes it produce anti-inflammatory compounds as well. And so glucosinolates, polyphenols, high dopamine foods, high protein foods, high fiber foods, there are some like the main, and omega-3. Those are the 6 main foods that you want to eat to have your gut bacteria produce the chemicals that you want to send to your brain, that you're full, that you're happy, and that help them grow.
I love that. Not only did you touch on what is essential from our food, no matter what our diet and lifestyle is, essential amino acids and fatty acids, but now going deeper into those high fiber foods that are going to be full of polyphenols and things like sulforaphane from your broccoli and cruciferous vegetables. But your touch on dopamine, I think, is just so important for people looking to calm those cravings and improve their mood and just get a little bit more consistent around the food that they're eating. Can you talk about I know you have a program in the book that supports people to not be so hungry, to not have these cravings, to not feel like a failure. How can people tame these out of control hunger cravings and trust their signals?
Yeah, I have a 5-step program in the book, basically, that starts with the fact that, it's not our fault. We live in a world with highly palatable foods. We don't get a lot of education about this gut brain connection. And so the first step is really just replenish the gut bacteria. We have no idea how to do that because 97% of people are really not feeding their gut bacteria enough fiber or polyphenols. And so replenish is probably the first step. And it's great because it's talking about replenishing, not restricting. So I don't talk a lot about, what you can't do because we kind of know that, but we still don't do it, right? Like we know we're not supposed to eat junk food, but we still want it and we still eat it. So instead of that, I talk about how to replenish that gut bacteria so that it can start working with you to crave the right thing. So replenish is talking about those 6 foods that I mentioned before, incorporating them. I put lists in there so you can kind of like add that to your diet. And then the second step is retrain. Retrain means know that we have neurological pathways that were set when we were kids. I don't know about you, Kelly, but like I still remember going to a game or going to a fair and like wanting the things that associate with that fun. And what they said is a lot of these companies knew that. And there's evidence that, Coke and all these brands would go to baseball games and they would promote their brands because they knew that once you associate that with fun and family and comfort, like you would want that later in life. And that's so true, right? Like all of us can remember the foods that we ate when we would go to these fun events with our families or friends. And so retrain is, yeah, understand that maybe Kit Kats were the thing that always made you happy as a kid. And it's now when you want to be happy, you yearn for something like a Kit Kat. I talk about how to retrain that. And it's literally the same way it was kind of formed in your brain. You can reform it. Our brain is there's a lot of neuroplasticity. And so retrain is a really important step. And then refresh is uh, your sleep pattern, because you want to be able to uh, so refresh is good night's sleep. And then we have reset, which is your circadian rhythm. So circadian rhythms is my jam. Like I am so obsessed with talking about circadian rhythms because I think that not enough people realize that circadian rhythms run 80% of our genes, and that by getting sunlight at the proper times, by getting darkness and getting sleep, you can feel fuller, you can feel happier. We know that women who sleep with a light on versus women who sleep in complete darkness have a much harder time losing weight in those studies. And we know that your cravings and your hunger is heightened when you don't get enough sleep or you're getting a light at the wrong time. So, really want to work on circadian rhythms, which I think is something that I've become obsessed with, like getting sunlight in the morning, getting like darkness before bed, trying to keep my sleep and wake times the same. I've gotten to the point where I test myself when my eyes are about to open in the morning, and I try to ask myself what time it is. I don't know if you've ever done that, but it's a great way to see how in tune you are with circadian rhythms. So I'll ask myself, what time do I think it is right now when my eyes open? And if I'll be like, I think it's like 6 o'clock, and then I'll look at the clock to see, because really, if you're really synced with your circadian rhythms, your body is going to know what time of day it is. It's really fascinating. So, replenish, rewire, reset, refresh, and then retrain is the exercise portion. We know that exercise is one of the best ways to get control of your appetite and cravings, which it is a little counterintuitive because some people think like, oh, if I exercise, I'm going to be so hungry. But it's the opposite. It actually tames those cravings pathways.
Oh yeah, for me, I mean, I remember having like big soccer tournaments and soccer games, my mom and dad like begging me to eat, but like once when you've worked out and exhausted yourself at a certain point, you're just like, "Oh, I just wanna, like, lay down," like,
Yeah.
it's, like, very calming. Chris and I joke that he's a golden retriever, like, he needs to go run around, and then he'll happily lay down on the floor for, like, hours, but he has to he has to exert himself in a certain way, or he never gets the same kind of, like, rest and relaxation, which I think if you've ever worked out, you feel that way. You know the
Yeah.
difference between kind of like a fast mind versus like a post-workout calm.
Yeah, exactly that. But that workout just triggers all these different things in your body, but really those craving pathways, that's one of the best ways to really, really stop your cravings. Like I mentioned before, a sunny walk is one of the easiest tips I would give to someone who is like, okay, where do I start with that? Okay, I know I have to go shopping for these foods and whatever, but like, what are some ways to treat your cravings without food, which would be a sunny walk. And then if you were like, how do I treat my cravings with foods? I have all these like little hunger hacks and craving crushers throughout the book, because I know there's so much research out there about certain foods and activities and elixirs that you can take to kind of calm your cravings and hunger while you're making all these changes. So something like peppermint, for example, is an amazing natural way to calm those cravings. It say, you're trying to come off this soda addiction, which, so many of us have. And you're trying to think of like, okay, what can I do? I'm like craving something sweet, craving some junk food, sniffing some peppermint, or having like a peppermint mocha or your own version of like a latte with some peppermint, or a tea with peppermint. These are things that you could be doing to help yourself through this. And I have so many, like over 40 ideas in there.
Well, you're gonna have to share a couple more because that peppermint one is great. And if you can, let's talk about your day. So,
Yeah.
day in the life of you from when you right before you open your eyes and you think about what time it is, all the way through the end of your day. How do you sync to your circadian rhythm, crush your cravings with some of your hacks, and really ensure that you're in control of your hunger?
That's a great question. I'm a little crazy like that in terms of that circadian rhythm thing, because it's been such a huge part of my work and things I'm interested in. So yeah, I try to wake up without an alarm, which I know is a dangerous game to play, but I always do an oh shit alarm. So like I always set one just in case I didn't wake up. And usually it ends up like ringing when I'm in the bathroom or something, like it's never, I do it just because in case of emergency or whatever. So I try to wake up without an alarm. And the key to waking up without an alarm is to try to go to sleep at the same times as you wake up at the same times. If you train your body to sleep at the same time and wake up at the same times, you can rely on it pretty quickly, like after a week or so. But that takes a little bit of training, especially at the nighttime portion, because that's the hard part for most people. So for me, the morning routine starts from the night before. I make sure I black out everything. The room is cool. And I kind of work backwards to say, all right, I need at least 8 hours of sleep. And for me, it takes a few minutes to go to sleep. So I always put a cushion there. And I try to keep my sleep times and wake times similar, meaning that I try not to like go crazy on the weekends where I'm changing that sleep and wake time by like more than 2 hours. Even if I stay up late one night, I try to wake up at similar time within an hour of when I usually wake up so that I can keep my circadian rhythms stable. I always get light before within the first few minutes of the day. So usually it means get up, go to the bathroom, and brush my teeth, and then walk outside my back patio. And just 2 minutes is all I need. And then I get ready for the day. And I usually try to go for a workout. Like today I didn't because I had this, but usually I would work out and then go to clinic and start my day. Usually my first meal and coffee or tea happens 60 to 90 minutes after I wake up, because it takes me a little while to like get, once I do the morning routine, get the sunlight, all that stuff. So it's like I call it a circadian fast. So I fast from, early dinner, say 7 or 6 or 7 p.m. All the way to like 9 a.m. say. And then, and that's pretty much my morning. I try to get some movement in the morning when I can, if my schedule allows. That would be the ideal situation. And then I go to work. And then once I see patients in the clinic, I kind of come home, usually either if I have a half day in clinic. Nowadays, I do kind of half days in clinic and half days doing my wellness stuff. And so I tend to try to come home for a late lunch, because I find that if I come home, I tend to make it rather than grabbing it on the go. And as we know, even just a simple act of making your own lunch improves the quality of the foods that you choose. And that way, you're making something healthy. Usually it's some leafy greens, some protein. And then usually around later in the afternoon, I will want something sweet. I think a lot of people have that like 3-4 o'clock sweetness. So I've tried to do it with a warm drink. I think warm drinks for me really quell that sweet tooth, and maybe some dark chocolate chips. That's kind of how I do it. And then I'll have an early dinner at 6 or 7 p.m. and then try to fast and do maybe some, I'll do a walk and sunlight in the evening as well to kind of reset that circadian rhythm, get more movement in. I try to get a lot of steps in the day. And then I'm done. So usually it's at least 1 to 2 outdoor workouts, shorter ones. And then, 3 meals, a snack, and then a circadian fast.
What are some of your favorite, like high protein, high dopamine breakfasts?
Oh, I love probiotic cottage cheese, like like the Nancy's or the good. There's a few Good Culture. There's a few brands. I love that with berries and some nuts. And sometimes I'll mix in some fruit and preserves. Usually it's cottage cheese is a winner for my breakfast. Sometimes I'll do scrambles. Sometimes I'll do smoothies, but I tend to like to eat my food. So there's this good amount of data that shows that when you eat your food, you tend to, you chew it more, you get more nutrients. And so I know that I used to do the smoothie thing, and I know you're a huge smoothie fan, and I love smoothies, but I think what I'm doing is I'm rotating it out just because I think for a while, I needed a change of pace. Like I wanted to chew, like eat something. And so now if I do a smoothie, it's more towards the afternoon, when I need a sweeter, like a pick me up. And that's when I do it. And by the way, one of the hacks I have in my book, and that I do a lot, is to sprinkle walnuts in your smoothie. Like I know you always give all these choices for your smoothies, but walnuts in particular light up parts of your brain that make you feel fuller. So what they did is they had people put 48 grams of walnuts, which is a lot, into a smoothie. And then they had a second group, a control group that had a smoothie with like a consistency of walnuts placebo in there, which I don't know how you can do that because you could definitely taste the consistency of walnuts, right?
Yeah.
So they did this placebo walnut um, smoothie every day. The students had to drink it. And then after 3 weeks, they had the students look at highly palatable foods and they connected them to electrodes. And they saw that the people who had the walnut smoothie actually lit up less in the highly palatable food pictures than the people who hadn't had the walnut smoothie. And so it's really a strong case. I mean, there's many reasons to eat walnuts, but it's a really nice way to, have a snack or add the little bit of dopamine pushed to your day is add them to your smoothie or add them to a bowl of cottage cheese.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I grew up on cottage cheese, I think the pink container, like
Oh yeah.
Knutson at the
Yeah.
time. I love good culture. It's definitely my pregnancy craving. Like I joke with
Yeah.
my community online, like I've secretly shared that I've been pregnant twice by posting cottage cheese, and people will be like, I think she's pregnant.
Oh my
Um,
God, really? That was your craving?
Oh yeah, hardcore. Like take me back to it was such a side at my like growing up when I was a kid. Like whatever my mom would make, it'd be like steak and broccoli or like chicken and asparagus and like an iceberg salad. But the pink container of cottage cheese would always be on the table. And we could always like put it on our plate as a side. And so yeah, I think it's like kind of like your baseball game. It's like food memories for me.
Yeah.
It's a bland, high source of protein for when I have food aversions at the first trimester of pregnancy. So it's cold. It's not like a hot thing. Like there's so many reasons why I love cottage cheese. I think what cottage cheese and even like certain Greek yogurt stand out to me is the amount of protein per ounce. And so
Yeah.
you really just can't get that with eggs. Like so many people undereat the amount of eggs that they need to hit the protein requirements to really feel full and satisfied between their meals. So,
Yeah.
when I look at the Fab Four smoothie, it just, it's my hack and it has been for my clients for so long. I'm not super dogmatic about it. It's not
Yeah.
my, you know, I have I would say like probably like 3 to 4 a week, maybe more if I'm, like, really
Yeah.
craving greens, but it is about like, it has always been about, like, starting your day with enough protein and
Mhm.
finding a way to do that that works for you. I have clients who have pushed back their ghrelin signaling, and they don't they break their fast at, like, 10 or 11, and they're eating leftovers from the night before, like, hey, it's like it is like a do you situation, with the caveat that I am looking for you to get a certain amount of protein and like whole foods in your diet, and so that you feel the best and so that your gut microbiome is living its best life. So
Absolutely.
we're on the same page there. And
What do you think about eating your smoothie with a spoon? Because that's something I do a lot, and I feel like it helps me with that like feeling of fullness. Because I think when I drink it, and sometimes I'm mindless, I'll be at work or whatever, but when I'm eating it, I really feel like I get a better experience. I don't know
yeah,
if you've ever seen that.
yeah, no, I mean, like, I think when there's a crunch factor or a chew factor, whether you're like, whether it's slightly been blended in, they're sucking it up like a thick straw and they're getting a walnut crunch, or
Yeah,
they're like
yeah,
having like some kind of like not really sugary, but like a grain-free granola on
Yeah.
top, or like even berries, it slows you down. And
Yeah.
you are chewing, you are getting like more salivary amylase, like an enzyme in your mouth. But yeah, I mean, it goes back to like, are you mindlessly just sucking it down, or
Yeah.
does it make you feel full? And I think one of the things that I really work on when I'm one-on-one with a client is the consistency of their smoothies. Cause if it's pourable like an almond milk and it's thin, like that is not going to stretch your stomach
Yeah.
and really hit those stretch receptors to calm ghrelin, because I don't think people realize like ghrelin is cyclical, and the way that we shut it down is physically stretching our stomach. And so if your
Mhm.
smoothie is the consistency, or like it's processed and you're clicking it out of a plastic, opening a plastic top and drinking some kind of
Yeah.
sure situation, like you're not going to have all the hunger hormone calming effects of eating a whole food meal that physically stretches your stomach, has some weight to it. And so weight is important when it comes to whatever breakfast you're eating. And that's why like even protein bars can be such a bummer to me, because it's technically feels like a snack. Like it's like
Yeah.
gonna hit you like a snack, and you're gonna think about food a lot sooner than if you ate a whole food meal that had some weight and quantity.
100%. Yeah. I feel that.
Yeah. Oh my goodness, Dr. Shah, it's always a pleasure to have you on the show. You are just a breath of fresh air, and such a realist, and I'm really excited about your new book. Clearly, I love hunger hormones, and when people don't feel shame around the foods that they eat or why they feel these cravings. And so super excited for people to get their hands on it. Where can they follow you along? Where can they get tips? Where can they find the book? Like, tell us all the deets, throw it in the show notes, and make sure everyone can find you.
Love it. It's called I'm So Effing Hungry. It's available everywhere books are sold. Get it from your local store or library if you want. I'm at amymdwellness.com, and my Instagram is fastingmd.
Love it. All right. Links to all of it and your website along with your book. Thank you so much for dedicating your time and skipping at least just your morning workout to
Yeah,
be
just
with us.
so
I
happy to
know,
do it.
I know you'll make up for it. But thanks again for your time. I always love talking with you.
Thank you.